Welcome to the Park Slope Food Co-op cooking series. We do these classes once a month, typically on the third Wednesday here at the co-op. They're also hybrid, so if you can't be here in person, today would be a good day since the weather's really bad. You can also join us on Zoom. Our next class is actually June 17th here again at the co-op. But today we have Ronna Welsh, who is a local chef and cookbook author.
Oh my gosh.
And operator of Purple Kale Kitchen Works in Sunset Park, a cooking school. Ronna is also a squad member and has taught a lot of our classes and has a broad knowledge of food and teaches us lots of things. So we're really excited to learn about pickles today. You can follow us on Instagram at foodcoopcooks.
.org.
And that's our website. Foodcoopcooks.org is our website. We're also on Instagram. You can sign up for classes. There's links to the Eventbrite. All of the people in the room and on Zoom probably already know that because you're here. But it helps to make announcements and make sure everybody knows what's going on. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ronna.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so pickles. The hardest thing for me about this class was selecting only 5 pickles. And then for the tastings, for those of you here, choosing only one of my 2 pickle shelves from home to bring to class. I love pickles. One of the things I like about pickles is the puzzle that you have to solve in matching certain flavors to certain things that you're pickling. You can pickle anything. You can pickle fish, meat, vegetables, fruit, etc. But one of my biggest criticisms of pickles is that people have a universal brine and then they apply that to everything. So your pickled ramps taste like your pickled asparagus, tastes like your pickled beets. So I want to show you today a few different brines. These are brines that some are used hot, some are used cold. We're going to pickle beets, rhubarb, asparagus, herbs, and garlic. These brines themselves, those are really the stars. The stuff that we pickle in them is just kind of play. So if you walk away from this class with anything, it's with the gumption to make brines and have them ready for when stuff comes your way and you say, wouldn't I love to pickle it? Pickle's a great preserving technique, so if you ever have extra of something or if you want to buy extra of something because it's about to go out of season, pickling gives you the excuse to do so. I have for you a quick pickle manifesto. I'm going to read it. So if you imagine that this is a long scroll, because when I was thinking about this class, I thought, oh, I wanted to mention that, and then I wanted to mention that. So it became this 12-point manifesto. I'm not kidding. It says right here, manifesto on the top. So quick pickles means that this is not some lacto-fermentation process. This happens with acid. So in this case, an assortment of different kinds of vinegar. You can also pickle something with citrus, like ceviche is a kind of pickled fish using lemon or lime. So here I'm going to use apple cider vinegar on the sweeter side, distilled vinegar, also used for cleaning, white wine, we'll get to this, but also white wine vinegar. Each is, on a range from really like very biting to rather sweet, and then what we add to it helps to accentuate or offers a counterpoint to those flavors. When you do pickle something, you want to think about size and density. Think about a beet. So a beet is a big, hard kind of boulder, right? In order for that to pickle, you have to do one of 2 things. You have to either cut it very thin, so maybe grate it, and then it'll absorb pickle quickly, or absorb pickling liquid quickly, or you have to open up its pores by roasting it, making it tender so that the brine can go through. Then if you want to, let's say it's, you have this idea that you want to pickle something for 5 hours from now, and you have a stalk of asparagus. The way to handle that is to cut the stalk of asparagus into thin strips so that it will absorb the pickling liquid more quickly. And then there's hot or cold. Sometimes it depends on how fast you need something to be ready. You know, the asparagus, for example, is pickled in cold brine. And that means that we make the brine hot because we want to combine all of the flavors. We want to infuse the brine with the various flavors. We use herbs and spices, we use garlic. But then we want it to cool down because we don't want to cook the vegetable beyond the pickling process. Again, something like beets, we're forced to. Okay. Another thing is, you can see here I have asparagus. This is probably a good example, actually. So the brine I'm using for something else, it's poured out. But this is asparagus that I pickle with tarragon. These are just, you see these? Like a couple bunches of tarragon. So, and you can also see the slivered garlic. What you get in the process of pickling asparagus is also pickled tarragon. Isn't that so great? You know, you get a bonus. Plus, you get brine that's infused with these flavors. And then the brine can become a salad dressing or a marinade. So when you think about pickles, you know, the more you can explore the range of flavors, the more adaptable the byproduct of that pickling is. Let's see. You can pickle one thing in many brines, or you can pickle many things in the same brine. So, you know, what you want to do is, the thing about pickling recipes, by the way, they're great to borrow. Like, pickling is so old, nobody has an original pickle recipe. It's something that gets passed down and then tweaked. You know, but it's essentially acid preventing bacteria from growing. In the case of quick pickles, also they need to be refrigerated because it doesn't do the job that like a canning does. Okay, I think I was like 17 or 15 points, but I'm coming to the end of my manifesto. Oh, last thing I'll say is that water is actually a key ingredient in making pickles. So you want to get the ratio right of, let's say, vinegar to salt or to sugar. Sometimes you then need to cut it with water so that it isn't so puckering. And you'll know when that's the case. All right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to show you first the brine for the beets, which is also the brine for the rhubarb. I don't have rhubarb. We actually had rhubarb this morning when I bought some, and we don't have rhubarb this afternoon, so I'm not going to demonstrate the rhubarb, but know that the same brine went to two things. Rhubarb super tart, beets earthy but leaning sweet. So here's how it goes. We're starting with apple cider vinegar. This also, by the way, this brine, you can see the end result here of the brine, the kind of, this looks like soot on the bottom. These are the spices that have settled. And I don't know if this is something that you can actually glimpse. So this was done with golden beets, the yellow beets, and the rhubarb. But there's a slight contrast in flavor because some of the rhubarb actually leached some of its own flavor into the brine. Okay, so we have our vinegar, and we're just going to do 3 cups.
So much vinegar.
So much vinegar. I do actually, I'm a little bit picky about vinegar. So if you can get the vinegar that has the mother in it and all the good stuff at the bottom, especially for apple cider vinegar, that's great. And then we're going to use sugar. So this is 1.5 cups.
Do most brines follow kind of a similar template, Ronna, where you have acid, salt, and sugar
No.
plus other things, or are there differences?
There are so many different brines. It doesn't.
So some might not
Yeah,
have sugar, some
you
might
can't-
not have salt.
Exactly.
Got
Exactly.
it.
Almost all have salt. This one actually doesn't have salt. Funny enough. But no, it's always you know, you definitely want to, you can't have vinegar without either sugar or salt, because then it's just straight vinegar. It's not an interesting brine. So you have to have something to balance.
And that was 1.5 cups of sugar?
That was 1.5 cups of sugar, yep. But, you know, for all the sugar and everything that goes into this, you're consuming not very much, if you can see all of the brine that's left over. This also makes the very best base for a dressing with a spicy mustard and olive oil for any kind of grain salad. So again, and it's extra good now that the beets and the rhubarb have steeped in it. So yes, you can make this, and then this is just your seasoned vinegar, right? Forget brine. That was a great class. I'm not going to pickle anyway, but now you have this great seasoned vinegar for a dressing. Again, enhanced with all of these delicious spices. May I hand this to you, and you can grab the beets.
Because
Yes.
those have vegetable matter in it, you have to keep it in the fridge, right?
There's, well, yes, you do. Yeah, exactly. The brines. I mean, I think I would anyway. Oh, if you, with these brines, since they pickled vegetables, do we need to store them in the refrigerator, even if they no longer have the vegetables in them? And the answer is yes, good idea.
For the sugar, can we use any type of sugar?
You can use any type of sugar. This is just granulated white sugar, but keep in mind that a brown sugar would be even sweeter. So just make sure that that's your taste. And then the pickle brine itself will be darker, and that might not be a problem.
Okay, so I'm taking beets out of the
Yes,
oven.
please. And you can put them on the table right here with the mitt. I have my spices here. So we're using ground mustard. This is actually not a spicy mustard.
That's not beets.
And, you know, we're gonna go pretty heavy on this. So this is like 2.25 teaspoons turmeric. And then,
Where do you want them?
here, you can put it right there, please. And then cumin. So mostly it's the mustard followed by the turmeric and then the cumin in terms of quantity. Something like this, pickle recipe, the brine recipe, one thing that's great is that you can take away from this the fact that mustard, turmeric, and cumin go really well together, right, with apple cider vinegar. So even if you make this pickle brine, but not for a while, you can have in mind that these 3 spices can be clustered together in your pantry so that when you have mustard and you want to season it, you can grab those 3 spices maybe and make a seasoned mustard. So it's fun to extract from one recipe little lessons that you can apply to others. These are the beets. So what I do to roast my beets, this in particular, these were huge. So do you want to show? And I can show them.
Let's do it. Zoom in.
So you see, and they're also, you know, sometimes you can't control how big or small they are. Ideally, they're around the same size. But what you want to do is you want to roast until the last man is down, even if that means taking some of the ones out. Don't under roast the beet, even if you're like, I don't mind the crunch, you won't get the sweetness. And the sweetness is what we're counting on also for the pickle brine, for these pickles. I have a little liquid. What I do to roast my beets is I'll put them in a pan like this, a high-sided pan, and I'll put, you know, anywhere from a 1/2 inch or more of water in the pan. It helps to steam them, which helps to make the beets easier to peel. Plus, what you get is this liquid on the bottom. And what I do to this brine is once this is heated through and the flavors are all combined, this is powdered spice, so that happens pretty quickly, but we're basically hoping for the sugar to melt. Once that's the case, then I'm actually going to take the liquid from the beets and add it to the brine itself, so to anchor the brine to the beet. Before doing so, I will steal some for the rhubarb itself, right?
What temperature do you roast these beets?
Pardon me?
What temperature do you roast the beets?
The beets, these were roasted at 325 for as long as it takes, yeah. These are all actually on the website, right? I believe
Yes,
so.
foodcoopcooks.org. If
Exactly.
you click on the pickle class, all the recipes are there.
And so I'm putting on gloves to handle the heat. It's easier to peel these when you can tolerate the heat when they're warm. The other thing about the gloves is this way I can use my hands to grab at the beet skin and I'm not gouging it because the gloves act as a little bit of a barrier. You can also use, a spoon if you want, but it comes off pretty quickly.
And these are golden beets.
These are golden beets, which is really pretty with this brine, but you can do it with red beets. And there are plenty of other, pickled beets recipes, right? So choose one that you like. And what I'm going to do is the beets that I have that I can show you have been pickling for about a couple of days. So this beet I'll put in the brine and it's not going to pick up the flavor until tomorrow. But what I like to do is with the brine hot and the beet also hot, then I'll come over and I'll cut it. And you can cut it any way that you want. You can do it in slices. You can do it in wedges. And then if I have this, let's see, grab a container and I'll show you how I pickle them.
Can you use other vinegars like fig balsamic?
So the question is, can you use other vinegars like, what was it?
Like a fig balsamic.
Fig balsamic.
Maybe. I think in that case, you don't have quite as much acid as you would associate with a pickle. So I'm not sure that I would call it a pickle in that case, but you certainly would eliminate the sugar, I would think. So here's the beets. And then all I'm going to do is pour some brine on top. And again, remember, I'm only pouring on, by the way, what I need to cover the beets so that I have extra for another time. And then I'm going to take my beet liquid and I'm going to strain it right in.
Is the beet liquid pretty strong? Because you didn't use very much.
No, it will concentrate, and you do want to taste it, and you want to make sure it just didn't pick up or the beets didn't give off any off flavor, which they shouldn't have. You want them washed, right? So there's no dirt in the liquid. So here are your pickled beets. I'm going to set those aside. And then this is the pickle brine, which I can also show you. Right? It just has this gorgeous color. So this is for beets, and then this is for our absent rhubarb. This is, by the way, what the rhubarb looks like when you pickle it. So we don't have any to demonstrate, but what you can see is I cut it into small little pieces. Some of this rhubarb was really thin, so all I had to do was slice it. If it were a thicker stalk, I probably would have cut it straight down the middle, lengthwise, and then cut it crosswise into these small pieces. What you want to avoid are large chunks, because then they'll be a little stringy. So to avoid peeling the rhubarb, I don't know if you've ever pickled celery. For me, if I pickle celery, even if it's short little sticks, I'll actually peel the celery first. It's just a matter of preference, but this helps you sidestep that altogether. All right, I'm gonna carrot. It's not too hot. There you go. Next up. I'm going to let it cool to room temperature in the container. So these are heat-proof containers. You can also throw the beets in the pot and just let them cool on your stove. But keep it, let it cool to room temperature. At room temperature, you don't want to put it into your refrigerator so hot because it'll just warm up your refrigerator.
And when's the ideal time to make them, and how long will they last?
These will, so the first question was, what is the ideal?
How long should they sit in the brine?
Until they're ready to eat, you mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it depends how thick or thin you cut them. If you wanted to eat them in an hour, you could cut them pretty thin, or you could grate them, because as long as they're roasted first, they're gonna, and they're hot and the brine's hot, they're going to pick something up. Again, the longer you can, so these are, I cut them pretty thick, knowing that they wouldn't be ready for a couple of days. I have had beets in my refrigerator for 6 months, right? I'm probably not supposed to tell you, I'm probably supposed to say for 7 to 14 days. Pickles won't go bad. You may decide that they're too strong. The other ways in which they become less appealing is they soften a little bit, but as long as you have the vinegar appropriate and they're in your refrigerator, there's nothing wrong with eating them, right? Waiting for some health department person to come in and
Well, nothing
Fuss at you.
arrest. Yeah, nothing can grow. Yeah, which is why the fig balsamic thing, may or may not work. But it's also really pretty evident. You open your jar and it tells you whether it's like hello, right? Like it'll show mold on top. But these things last forever. Okay, so that's our beets and our rhubarb. The next thing we're going to do is garlic. This is another hot pickle. So this is, again, something that not only is the brine hot, but we're going to cook the garlic in the brine for about a minute. We do this because there's actually like an amino acid in the garlic itself that if we take the garlic and just plunge it in the brine without cooking it for that minute, it will turn kind of like a bluish green. It is safe to eat, but not necessarily appealing. So I have whole cloves of garlic in this case. Sometimes, the garlic is different sizes, so you might take a large clove and cut it to the size of the smaller so they pickle at the same time. I'll show you what the garlic looks like when it's pickled. You see that, and you see, of course, the difference in the brines. This brine is made...
I'll do a close up.
Close up. Pickle close up. Here.
So
And you can see
those
they're-
are sliced in half.
These are sliced in half because they're really big. Yeah, they're a little bit translucent, but they're there's you can pull them apart with your finger. That's how tender they are. Mm-hmm. Right, but they still have bite. They're not mushy. Nobody wants a mushy pickle.
They smell really good.
These pickles I put on everything. They're actually great to just like pop in your mouth, right? They're great with shellfish, great on roasted fish, great on oysters, if you're a fish eater. Okay, so for this, we're gonna use both distilled vinegar and white wine. And you might ask, why not use white wine vinegar, right? Wouldn't that be the natural marriage of these two? But white wine vinegar has a certain flavor, and in fact, some white wine vinegars taste different than other white wine vinegars, so this gives you a little bit more control. The white wine offers some acid, not as much as the vinegar, but it softens, it sort of tames the pickle and makes it a little bit more approachable. So we have these two. And then we're just going to use salt and sugar. And this is the simplest brine that we have. Oops. All right. This is 2 cups.
So do you taste it to kind of get the right ratio, or did you just sort of learn by trial and error, and now you know how much vinegar to wine to use in this recipe?
This is, so, one thing that I can rely on is if I buy the same brand of vinegar and the same wine, it will be the same
You get
each
some
time.
consistency, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not buying vinegar made by like the guy down the street. There might be some variable there, right? So this is a really easy recipe to replicate. The main variable is the size of the garlic, you know, and how fresh the garlic is. So this is my distilled white vinegar and my white wine. Oops, and my white wine. I'm going to add to this salt and sugar. And it's just a tablespoon of each. This is a teaspoon. So I'm going to do 3 of these, if you all know your kitchen math. This is just kosher salt. I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. And then this leaves a really nice clear brine. And 1 cup wine. Yep. And again, you'll have the recipes. So these are my cloves. I use the garlic in a bunch of different recipes, so I'm just taking a few here. I'm going to cut some in half lengthwise. Keep the small ones small. I cut them in half lengthwise just because I like the look. You can cut them any way you want. If you wanted to make this go faster, you would sliver the pieces. So waiting just for the sugar and the salt to come together. There isn't any flavoring beyond this, so I'm not thinking in terms of infusing with the spices. And then I'm going to add the garlic once it comes to a boil. And what we're looking for is just for this to cook for 1 minute, and then this is going to cool again in the pot.
And so the 1 minute of cooking is to get rid of, what was the chemical that
Is
you said?
to prevent it from turning blue. So there would be a reaction if you just put the garlic in with the vinegar itself. It won't happen right away, but it would happen probably.
I've experienced that before and I never knew why.
Yeah, and so this cooking it for just a minute should do it. This brine can accommodate, you know, 3 heads of garlic, right? I'm just going to show you a little bit. And then, of course, we have the finished product here. So you can see that we have this pickled garlic in whole form, whole or half clove, but we also, in this asparagus, have these thin slices of garlic that just went in. We'll show you the asparagus in a minute. You could crush the garlic. I don't crush it in this case because I like the shape. I like to preserve the shape. I think it's more versatile going forward because that way I can, again, serve it whole or you can slice it. If you did crush it, it would pickle that much faster. Yeah, and actually imagine if you crushed it, you would also get really garlicky vinegar, which would be nice. The little, yeah, like the little sprouts. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I look at those and I think, ooh, what would they be like pickled too? So if you think about this, right? I'm looking at the garlic and I think little white turnips, right? I wonder what sunchokes would be like. I'm almost trying to think of the range of vegetables that fall into this color category, parsnips. I mean, I don't actually know. I haven't done this, but you can imagine the steps involved. So, would it be a parsnip is sort of chewy and it's firm. So I would want to cut that maybe into a slaw. What else is at the market right now that we can think of? Stuff coming in.
Green onions.
Green onion, radish. Yeah, that would be great. Now, for a radish, here's my quiz question. For a radish, is that something that you would cold or hot pickle, do you think? Cold, why? It's crunchy, which is an indication that it has it's very porous, right? Like it's got tons of crunchy cells. So if you think about a radish, it has so much water in it, so it would pick up the brine almost instantly. So that would be a cold brine.
So apparently we're having some sound issues. Is my mic okay?
I think it might just be the sound of the stove.
Is too loud?
No, well, I turned off. Go ahead and turned on the noise removal.
Okay, so we're good now? Or maybe?
Maybe.
Please tell us in the chat if you still can't hear us.
It is better now.
Awesome.
Okay. So this is our pickled garlic. You all will get a chance to taste this. And the other thing I'm going to do with the pickled garlic is I'm going to cook some collard greens with the pickled garlic. So this will be served. This will be like a kind of a warm vinaigrette. So we're going to pretend like they do on Food TV that our minute is up. And there's our garlic. Okay. We have a couple more. We have our, how are we doing on time? We have our asparagus and our herbs. So again, I have parsley, which I'm going to pickle, and tarragon is going to be pickled by way of pickling the asparagus. These are going to be cold pickles. So what I'll do is I'm going to show you how I prepare the vegetables and how I prepare the brine, but I'm not going to combine them because the brine needs to settle and chill. Okay. Our pot. For our asparagus, what we want is some cloves. So the asparagus and the tarragon actually come last. We want some slivered garlic. You can use a knife, or if you're comfortable with a slicer. And what you look for is just really thin slices. I like to do them lengthwise because then it gives you, really pretty pieces. And it makes quick work. This is going to be a white wine vinegar. This goes into our pot. And this has a lot of salt. We're actually going to use a 1/4 cup of salt for this. No measurable amount of sugar, just a tablespoon. And then we want our white wine vinegar. So this is going to be 1.5 cups. You all knew you could do that, right?
Remove the slow pour. Just don't forget to put it back on.
Right, exactly. And then this is where we're going to use our water as well.
And how much water, Ronna?
3/4 cup. So it's about half as much water to vinegar. White wine vinegar is really strong. I love the flavor of it, but it's you need to tame it sometimes. And then here's our asparagus. Asparagus is like, we're at the sweet spot for asparagus, so grab it while you can. This is asparagus that just came from the shelf. So the way that I trim it is I usually just start at the very end, and I go like this until it snaps, which is usually closer to the edge than if you were to just snap it. People say like snap it where it snaps easily, except it also snaps easily up here. So you want to just take as little as you can off of it.
So it's roughly 1.5 inches, maybe.
But it depends on which, like
Some of the thicker stalks.
exactly,
because
because like some I took this much and some I took this much. It all depends. And then what you want to do to cut it is, some of this depends, by the way, on what you have to pickle it in. For something like this, I try to keep things as whole as possible to give me more options later on. This is hard to pickle in this container. So I actually like to use a Pyrex dish, or square cake pan, avoid metal. So a glass Pyrex dish is ideal because you don't need to make so much extra brine just to cover the tippy top. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut almost all of these in half. If these were super pencil thin asparagus, that would be one thing. Cutting it in half, so one of the reasons I buy thick asparagus is that by cutting it in half, I expose the inner cells so the absorption's faster. If these were pencil asparagus, I wouldn't cut them in half and it would just be a slower take, the pickle. So I do what I say is drawing, which is I kind of hold the asparagus
I'll try to get it
and
overhead. There we
then
go.
follow with my finger all the way down so that you can cut it in half. Do you knife skills people remember that?
Come on this side. Any questions so far?
Is this on? It's
I can
interesting.
hear it.
Look at that, it has a temperature. I don't even know what that's about. Here we go. Yeah. Okay, so I'll do this, and then since I do want to put it in a slightly smaller container, I'm going to go ahead and just cut them in half now widthwise. I like to always cut things on the bias if I can, thinking ahead to how pretty it might look on the plate if cut that way. So to do that, I'll actually just, instead of lining them up like this, where I would just have to cut them head on, I actually want to line them up at a slight angle. And then follow that with my knife to cut on the bias. All right, so this is basically done. There's not much to see here other than,
Some warmed up garlic.
everything coming in. But this is our asparagus. So what I would do is, you can pick the asparagus or the tarragon off the stem. I wouldn't bother. It actually makes it easier to fish it out. And then these go together. When this brine is completely cool, it doesn't have to be refrigerator cold, it just has to be room temperature. You marry them together. And what you get is this. So you can see the difference in color. Again, this is just done overnight. Done overnight with a cold brine. And you'll taste it. So this still has like the snap to it. This doesn't, but it still has some bite. You don't want this to be like canned asparagus. You want a little bit of texture. And then of course you have your tarragon, which, doesn't look good to the eye, but is really, really delicious.
Delicious seaweed.
So that's a pickled herb that we got by accident. Last thing we're going to do is pickle parsley. So let me show you that. Actually, so this pickled parsley, again, is another cold brine. I've done every kind of herb. I have pickled parsley, rosemary, fresh thyme, oregano. Sometimes I'll do it in different kinds, right? This is obviously a great brine for herbs, but I also have Where is it? My pickled. I have pickled sage somewhere over here. Oh, right here. It's in front of me. Thank you. No, these are my green beans. Thank you. See, I put it label out so you all can help me. So this is pickled sage. Like, look how gorgeous that is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this actually came from my garden, and these were these beautiful sage leaves, and this was pickled in the beet rhubarb brine. Okay, so you see how you can kind of change it up. And then what you have is like delicious sage-infused apple cider vinegar stuff. These green beans, by the way, so remember I told you I brought my pickle shelf? These green beans were pickled in the same brine as the asparagus. Okay.
I know, I can smell something.
I cooked an empty pot. Take 2. All right, so for our herbs, we're going to use this. We've got our white wine vinegar again, this time on its own. We're going to add a little bit more sugar than we did before. So
You're going to hold the pot?
yeah, but it's hot on the bottom here. There you go. That.
Did we make
Okay.
it?
We did. Except for the part that spilled on your foot just now.
That's okay. I already got rained on. That's a little vinegar.
Exactly. Okay, sugar, 1/4 cup. We're gonna add water to this. Salt.
And how much water was that? Just like a 1/4 cup?
Yep, and that's really the part that you can do to taste. We need some garlic, so we're gonna do a couple of cloves sliced. And then we're going to use red pepper flake, mustard seed, and coriander seed. What's that?
How do you choose whether to use seeds or the powder?
Preference. Sometimes it's, so first of all, these are brown mustard seeds. So the flavor is a little bit different. Oh, how do I choose whether to use mustard powder or seeds? The other thing is I like the look of the seeds in the brine, and the mustard powder would color the whole brine. But again, it's really a matter of preference. You can even leave them out if you want to, for example, mix it with Dijon mustard at the end. It becomes something different, but it's still a pickle. Can you roast garlic and pickle it? I bet you can. Yeah, I bet that would be delicious. Does the ratio change if you use mustard seeds or powder? Probably. I would probably use less powder than seeds because the powder would disperse evenly throughout, or at least start with less. Yeah. Do you have to toast the mustard seeds before using them? You can. I found that it doesn't actually make that much of a difference. Okay, so this is my, it came to a boil, it simmered for a bit. So this is my brine, and I leave it here, right? And then what I would do is once it's ready, I would take my parsley, just like this, and I would shove it. I try to bend so that The stems are in there too, so they can pickle. And then I would pour the cold brine on top. And then what I would do is to keep something like this submerged, you know, because the leaves and the stems will start to try to pop out, just put a piece of plastic wrap on top to keep it submerged under the brine. Okay. And then do we have time for me to do, I think so, one, because we started right. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you how to use some of that pickled garlic to make these collard greens. This is a bag of maybe, this is probably about 3 pounds of collard greens. They have been washed, dried, and then ribboned. As you can see, they're cut into maybe 1/4 inch ribbon. I store them in a bag like this. They've been spun to dry, and then I put them with clean, dry paper towels because they'll continue to give off moisture as they sit inside the bag, and because the salad spinner never, you know, makes something completely dry, then you can just kind of reuse these towels. But it's a great way to store any of your greens, including your herbs. Okay, so then I want to grab a pan.
There you go. Thanks. Is the goal to sort of stir fry the greens?
Yeah, and actually sometimes I've even used a wok. So I might need to use the stove for this because this burner is giving me an error message.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Do we need to turn it off and turn it back on again?
I did.
Always a good first line of defense.
Yeah, it might be the pot actually. So can we do it over here?
Let's see if we can, is this, yeah, you use the oven, so.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, let's do close up, Michael, so that we can.
I have olive oil, and really what I'm going to use is olive oil and this pickled garlic. So this is the pickled garlic that I did before. I'm just going to grab a bunch. It's probably even more than I need. This I'm going to cut by hand. Yeah, not quite yet. So this I'm cutting by hand just because it might actually fall apart if I did it with the mandolin. And you can actually see how, you know, kind of translucent that garlic is. So it pickled all the way through.
Watch out with those tongs. They're on
On the induction burner that doesn't work, except for tongs. All right, so this is my pickled garlic, right? I have some already cut here, so you can see. And then I have my olive oil. So what we're going to do is, this is a little bit of a riff on sautéing greens with garlic and olive oil and finishing it with vinegar or finishing it with lemon. Let's see how many I can fit in here. I'm going to add salt, not sugar. And just going to toss this around.
And do you have it over a pretty high flame?
In this case, I do. It's a really heavy-duty pot, so it took a minute to heat up. But you're not looking to, do more than just kind of wilt this. And by the time you add the vinegar, then it's going to really steam pretty quickly. So once everything starts to become ribbony, and what you're looking for is for the chlorophyll to come out so you can see it turning like a bright green, I'm going to add some of this pickled garlic. And then I'm also going to splash in some of this brine. And that's basically it. So it's kind of like an all-in-one thing, right? I would add maybe black pepper to that. I would add croutons to it. The other thing that I'll just finish with is this is the pickled parsley. So this is the parsley that I did ahead of time. And what I like to do is sometimes turn this into a relish because the brine itself is a little bit sweeter. So it mimics relish that you would get in a jar, minus like a lot of the preservatives and the food coloring. And what you can do with this is, so I have just some minced shallots. And I would just mix the two together. Sometimes I'll add sesame seeds to it. You can really do whatever you want. I also sometimes will add the stem to it because the stem stays crunchier than the leaves themselves.
So they can see from
Oh, thank you. Right, so those are cut off. This is the stem. And then again, I don't mind the stem. If you do, just take it off. I don't mind whatever brine comes with it. And then I'll just combine it with the red onion.
It's a beautiful color on collard greens.
The collard greens are, yeah, I love preparing collard greens that way. Yeah, so this is our pickled parsley relish. It's a 2-second thing because you already put all the work into making the pickled parsley. So you get to have, kind of instant payoff.
What would you put this on?
I would put this on hot dog, on sausage. Today I have it paired with deviled egg. I would put it on toast with olive oil, on avocado, on. Yeah, this is as close to a sweet and sour pickle. This is as sweet as I tend to get, but if you're a fan of bread and butter pickles, then you'll really like the flavor of that, and you can imagine. Actually, this is really, really great with cheese. With sharp cheese. So sometimes if I have a cheese platter, I'll put this out. And what's really nice about this is you can pile it on top of the thing that you're eating. Grilled cheese sandwich with pickled parsley relish.
Yum.
Great.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. That's it. I think I've wrapped that up. You guys have any more questions?
We have one here.
Can you walk us through kind of your thought process on which vinegars go with which vegetables? Like, is it a thought on size? Is it flavor profile?
Sure. So the question is, how do I choose which vinegars to go with which things to pickle? So some of it is just what I've tasted before. And it all starts with the brine. Usually, let's say I've made this apple cider vinegar brine. And the first thing is to get the proportion of like sugar or in this case, sugar, there's no salt in it, right? Other brines, other vinegars, sugar and salt. Once you've got that right, and you know you get it right, when you spoon it into your mouth and you go, you know, it lands, right? So that sometimes takes a little play, and that's when recipes that exist are pretty great. You start with those ratios, and then, you know, and then I open up my pantry and my vegetable drawer, and I start dipping things in. It was a surprise to me that herbs could be pickled in so many ways. So that was like really eye-opening, you know? And then what's interesting is to think about, you know, I was talking about how I think of kind of white vegetables or grassy vegetables as being really good for this brine. I see no reason why you couldn't try it with the other. And in fact, it would pick up that really lovely color. So it really is experiment. And you don't have to go through the whole pickle process. You could take that slice of radish and just dip it in the brine. You know, half of what I do is just like walking around my kitchen, dipping things in other things. So that's part of it. This brine for the rhubarb and the beets makes great brine for carrots, for apples. This brine makes great brines for pears. They're two totally different things. So I think, in a way, the question I would say is, how are you going to use them? One of the things that I have over here are, for the pickled beets, I have it paired with labna, which is like a soured cream, and walnuts. And then for the rhubarb, we're pairing it with a spiced pulled pork, where I've poured some of the brine from pickling the rhubarb into finish the pork itself. So, you know, play around. Again, I suggest choosing more than one brine. Like, it's really great to have a brine that feels the opposite of the other brine, so that as you buy new produce or fruit, you can really kind of experiment. And then again, keep in mind that anything becomes a vinaigrette or a sauce once you have the vinegar in place. Yeah. Yes?
One more.
Is it good, kind of like mother brines, or is there any other like vinegar that you kind of grab frequently?
For pickling. Yeah, this is pretty much it. White wine, sometimes a rice vinegar. I mean, so those are like, you know, rice vinegar is a little bit sweeter, so for some great cucumber pickles with a rice vinegar. Again, I sort of avoid anything that feels prepared, you know, like that fig balsamic vinegar, or a vinegar that's tarragon vinegar. Those can be great shortcuts, but I don't like anyone taking the shortcut for me. I would rather put really fresh tarragon in vinegar that, you know, I've purchased. Because one of the things that happens is when you buy things that, you know, the more preparation, often the cheaper the ingredients that go into that preparation. So all those flavored vinegars are there for the taking, though, and sometimes those are really great to just see, you know, what you like. Yeah, your spice drawer is open to you for exploration, you know. And if you're unsure how to get started with spices and pickling, you want to take your spice, maybe it's a new spice to you, or maybe it's a seed that you haven't used before, and you want to pair it with salt and then taste it, you know, with your finger on a spoon. See if you like that combination, and then you can pair, one of my favorite spice salts is coriander seed and cumin seed. And you think, well, like I think that would be so great with the brine for the rhubarb or the beets. To find that out, I would taste the spices first together, whether it's with sugar or salt, before just adding them to the brine willy-nilly. So like improvisation starts always at the smallest level, you know.
In case you make something that doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
Do you just crunch up the seed in your mouth to taste it? Because it's not.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can grind it. You can. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people don't love seeds. I eat them sort of like they're candy, you know.
That's how you
Anything
learn.
else? I feel like we're wrapping up. There's so much food. Sorry, people at home.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah. else? Brines.
Have you ever used molasses?
No, but I think molasses would be great. Used sparingly.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, because then it also would have like a little bit of like a molasses in the beet brine with the beets. I think would be
This
delicious.
was a 5-star class.
Oh, did you hear that? So nice. And then you could saute the beets, and they would caramelize really beautifully because of the sugar.
So before we close out, just some closing announcements. So this was recorded and we will post it on our YouTube channel. If you just do a search for Food Co-op cooking classes, you can find us on YouTube. And Ronna's recipes are at foodcoopcooks.org. If you click on the pickling class, ingredient lists and all of that stuff
Yeah.
is there. And then
Some of these recipes are also in my cookbook, which I have a copy of to look at, called The Nimble Cook.
yeah. And then
Thing. Oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say on June 17th, we're going to have Betsy Andrews, who's a James Beard Foundation and International Association of Culinary Professionals award-winning food and drink writer. She just co-wrote a cookbook. I think it's
Coastal
pre-order. It's
cooking.
not
Yeah.
quite out yet. So she's going to make a couple of like summer salads that you can use for parties and things. That'll be on June 17th here at the co-op.
Do we sell this book downstairs?
No, you can get it online. Don't talk to me about it.
Unacceptable.
I know.
One other announcement is just that if you are not a member of the co-op, you've been asked to say, thank you so much for coming. If you'd like to become a member, you can become a member. There are openings, but you can't do any wandering around.
Downstairs.
Yeah.
Directly
No shopping.
Out tonight.
All right, thanks
All right,
everybody.
thanks everyone. Thanks all.
Come eat.